Hi there, Michael here. If you have any interest in immersive or spatial audio, today's video is going to be a special treat for you. The following is a conversation with Pablo Garcia-Valencuela from 9 Angles for Forte. Pablo is a true pioneer in the field of immersive live performance. Last year he released a highly innovative virtual instrument called SPAT Curve, which allows musicians to play three-dimensional sound on stage. Pablo holds a PhD in electroacoustic composition from City University in London and has been working on multi-channel instrument research for over 20 years. His approach combines art and creativity with a healthy dose of scientific influence. Among many other things, we discuss instruments based on the theories of general relativity and quantum mechanics. I'm sure you guys did not see that one coming. Now, before we continue, a quick request. If you get any value out of my videos, please do me a favor, like, subscribe, and leave a comment. That is the best way, actually the only way, to get this content in front of more people. But enough said, let's turn it over to Pablo and his take on immersive music. Well, first of all, thank you for coming on my channel, Pablo. I recently had an interview with Gerd Gönen, and he is completely happy about your instrument. And he said, well, this is the guy you need to talk to. So I reached out to you, and thank you for coming on. This is going to be really interesting. You have a very, very interesting instrument. And most importantly, you also have a very, very interesting history. And you've actually been in that space for quite some time and worked with multi-channel audio in composition for a long time, much, much longer than most people. So my first question is, with all your experience, since Atmos and Ambisonics arrived in mainstream, did this change anything, how you approach immersive audio and the direction that you're taking?
Yes, Michael. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor. Yeah, it has changed a lot. I mean, I've been a rat in a lab for a long time. Not only me, but those who dedicated ourselves to academic music, right? I studied electroacoustic music, and so it's experimental sound music. But we lived in universities, and we played our music in festivals, like specialized festivals. And when Dolby Atmos came out, I was very skeptic. I didn't want to hear about it because I had heard 5.1, 7.1, blah, blah, blah. And I have to say, I did not really I like cinema. I'm not an expert, but I like cinema. And I did not like much how was surround sound used in most movies. So when Dolby Atmos came out, I thought like, oh no, again, one more, cinema thing and blah, blah, blah. But then it started growing and growing, everybody talking about it. And I thought, you know what, I have to give it a try. I did. I loved it. It was a huge step from surround sound. But more importantly, it gave us the opportunity to share our music, our work. Somebody somewhere else in the other side of the earth can listen to what you have created in a multi-channel 3D system. Yeah, perhaps most likely with headphones in a binaural translation, but it's already possible to stream a 3D sound multi-speaker work of music. So I think, yeah, it changed a lot.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you say that and you approach it from that perspective, because that's actually true. I mean, Ambisonics has been around since the 70s, really, right?
Yeah.
But it was just so inaccessible to most people. I think most people don't underestimate really the importance of Dolby Atmos and similar technologies in terms of democratizing the access to these technologies, right? So it's no longer the people that are the pioneers in that field, like you. It's now everybody who can experience that, and even if it's only something that you experience through binaural rendering, it's still more than you could like 10 or 20 years ago. So that's really interesting. Now, kind of in your experience, how do you think that the field is moving? There's a lot of talk about, kind of it's not really that important anymore. It was kind of something that just happened for a quick while, and people don't really like it. So how do you actually see the future of Dolby Atmos?
I think it's here to stay for a while. Well, you never know. I've been to conferences of other like experts, and they don't seem to be convinced that Dolby Atmos is here to stay. They may have reasons for it. They're more experienced than me in the industry, so I'm listening. But who knows? Sony 360 is right there pushing it.
Yeah.
Ambisonics, as you said, is a 70s technology, which recently is kind of available for free, actually. Well, speakers are not free, but the binaural rendering, it's pretty much free. And I think, well, let's put it this way. In terms of technical aspects, to me, 3D sound is here to stay. It's a superior way of representing sound. So everything that was recorded before 3D sound was possible is history to me. For Gert too. And but what format is gonna prevail? I don't know. I would bet on Dolby Atmos because of the the cinema industry. But suppose it doesn't. To me, it doesn't matter. What matters is that 3D sound is here to stay. It's again, it's technically superior to stereo, but that's one part. The other part is what can you do with it creatively. So we've heard a lot of music being converted into immersive spatial 3D sound formats. Some of it can work very well, like hip hop, for example. I'm thinking about mainstream, but it wasn't created for those systems. So what we're yet to see is music created on purpose for 3D sound and exploring the actual emotional and artistic possibilities that only a 3D sound system can give you.
Yeah, I mean, you might know that my field, my background is actually a little bit different. So I'm actually not coming directly from music. I'm more coming from immersive media in general.
Yeah.
And actually, to be perfectly accurate, from the education angle
Yes.
of those things. And when it comes to immersive media, things like virtual reality and augmented reality, those things are evolving as we speak. And even though kind of every attempt sort of is just short-lived, it gets better and better, and it's just a question of time that this technology gets to a point where it's easily accessible to everybody. And for that you actually need 3D audio, right? So there's just no other way to do that. And kind of also in game design, quite frankly, I'm doing a lot of things in game design. So even though you are absolutely right in the sense that Dolby Atmos might not be the format that's going to survive, we don't know, right? And a lot of people have their doubts, but the technology as such is really important.
Yeah.
Now, this brings me kind of to the next question, because your approach is actually a little bit different to many approaches that we see with things that are coming out in the Dolby Atmos space, in that you are drawing from your experience in dome systems, really. So you have this instrument, which is called SPAT Curve, and that is a 3D Kontakt instrument. I'm understanding that you actually applied for a patent for that, so there's a patent pending.
Yes. Yes.
And that is based on your sampling technique. That my understanding is like a 17-channel sampling technique that kind of uses sort of a dome setup. I'm curious, talking about this instrument. Let's talk a little bit about SPAT Curve.
Yes.
So what is the purpose of that instrument? And you also talk about an instrument that reacts spatially.
Yes.
What do you actually mean by that, and how does this differ from, let's say, something panning in a Dolby Atmos bed, for example?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I will put it this way. I'm not making tools. I'm making instruments. It's different. And my instruments are primarily conceived for live performance, live immersive performance. Yeah, they're MIDI, so you can use them in a studio, and you should, as part of a huge palette of possibilities or tools that you might also have. But they are primarily conceived for live performance. And let me just quickly explain where my motivation came from. So I used to play live using 8-channel systems. So 2D, not 3D, but multi-channel surround experience for the audience. We're talking about 2014, 2015, when we used to play a lot. I used to have a band, if you could call it a band or a project, if you wish. And we played several times in Europe, in Mexico, in many festivals. And I think it was kind of experimental rock music. I would classify it as that. But I think we managed to create some reasonably good experiences for the audience. But from the point of view of the musician, was frustrating for me because most of the work was performed by the computer. So, and pre-designed in a studio, like most of the interesting spatial work going on in the music was performed by a computer. We were playing live drums and live keyboards, and those were static, right? Nothing was happening spatially speaking. So again, it was a boring experience for us, for me I'm not really a performer, but I have played live and I would do it again. It was a boring experience for me playing that. So I thought, it would be great if our instruments, thinking about drums and keyboards, could react spatially live. And also give us an opportunity to even improvise. Sometimes interesting things might happen on the side of the drum, so let it continue. Sometimes it might not be that interesting. Let me take over as a keyboard player. And I thought, well, the technology is not there, so I'll wait. That was my frustration until I came across Kontakt. And to my surprise, I was able to design my own imagination through Kontakt. Kontakt, it's not made for 3D sound. It was like a way of cheating Kontakt. It's still like a very interesting architecture work what Kontakt has inside, because it allows you to do basically whatever you want. So I found a way. It took me 6 months, like studying the manual and and then thinking about my recording technique, blah blah. This was the first time I managed to produce one instrument was in 2017. And that was my really first instrument when I thought, oh, this is doable. I can do it. So I took it seriously, and by 2019, I got a grant from the government for research. So I started, working a lot into that until today. But to answer your question, what my instruments do is reactivity during performance. So depending on dynamics, for example, velocity, low dynamics might produce a very slow or mild movement. And high dynamics, fortissimo, high energy, will produce a faster movement all the way to the back, for example. And the best possible example for me to explain this to the audience are my drums. Right now I have 16 instruments. More are coming. Some are orchestral, some are electronic, some of them are actually whistles and Mayan, Aztec regional stuff. But my drums, which are called 3D drums, have a very particular architecture. So one of the snares is fixed in space. It is 3D. All of the samples are 3D. Okay, the origin of the sample is a ambisonic like 3D sampling, right? So it sounds 3D, okay, but that's not all. It has a behavior. So one snare will sound fixed in space to the front of the system in a concert, and the second snare is going to change position every time you hit it. Same thing with the hi-hats. You need two hi-hats. If you're going to be the drummer, you're going to need several pads, right? And you're going to need two snares, two hi-hats. One hi-hat, or you might be able to get away with it programming the movement to the rim of one of your, pads, but I wouldn't recommend that. I would prefer two hi-hats. One is going to be fixed, the other one is going to be moving, changing position every time you hit it. In the case of the toms, for example, they behave dynamically. So if you play them softly, they're going to pan left and right in the front of the system like any other drum set, okay? Except that the sound is 3D, not stereo, but their behavior is going to be left-right, normal. But when you play them hard, high dynamics, high energy, they're going to move all over, above, to the back, to the sides of the audience during a concert. So to me, that's fascinating because I can see a cause on stage. Like, I consider myself to be like futuristic in certain things, but conservative in others. I like a musician sweating on stage, playing. The communication that happens there, if you like the music, the physical gesture of a musician creating the sound in that moment is very expressive to me. So my idea was I need a visual cause on stage and a spatial effect. That's what I want. I want to see the musician causing different things spatially, depending what note the musician hits or how hard the musician hits the note. That was my motivation, and that's what I'm proud of. And that's why I call them instruments. They're not tools, they're instruments, and you need to learn how to play them like any other instrument, right?
Yeah, I noticed that there's actually a little bit of a learning curve there. So people need to actually kind of get familiar with the way these instruments work. And I found one thing that's interesting that you said, the importance of seeing somebody sweat on stage, right?
Yeah.
And kind of we are not going to get into artificial intelligence, but you might know that I also do a little bit on AI, because that is, as an educator, I simply need to, because my students are going to be exposed to that in the future. And one kind of thing that I always say is that the actual kind of musicianship, so sort of being on stage and performing for an audience, that's going to be the main focus in the future, because people want to have that engagement. They want to kind of be in the room with the musician and sort of see the musician sweat and kind of enjoy the music that is generated. So I think your approach is actually very timely in the way it kind of does things. Now, your instruments, and we're going to talk a little bit later about how everything works and also the setup and everything. But there's a certain randomization in there, right? So if I, for example, do a studio session and I have the DAW play multiple times, I will get different results, right? So this, do I understand that right?
It depends on the instrument.
It depends on the
Like
instrument.
I have some beautiful wooden sticks. It's like a percussion thing that it's completely random. Or the marimbas are interesting because they are completely random. Every single note you hit, you cannot predict where it's gonna come from. Although it's a mild effect. It's like it's not really making your head turn too much. But if you listen to the marimbas, it's gonna be very organic spatially, but you have no control other than that it's going to be random. In the case of the drums, going back to the drums, they're not random, they're sequential. Every time I hit a note, it's going to change position sequentially around and then above and then at the very top of the concert, no? Of the system. I can create random experiences if I mix the one that I know that it's moving and the one that I know that it's not moving. I can decide that live. I can improvise with that. And in the case of the toms, you just need to combine different toms to create a completely random experience, or to stick to one tom to create a sequential movement. So my idea is that the drummer is in control. The drummer needs to know nothing about audio or 3D sound. The drummer only needs to know how that instrument works and play and improvise. Also, the fact that the drummer has the possibility to move around and do so rhythmically, spatial rhythms, create spatial rhythms live, and then at some point decide to become static, No more movement. So I allow other instruments to take over and move around. Because in my experience, when everything is moving all over, it might be interesting for a few minutes, but then it becomes boring. You need resources to structure space, so to speak, to structure time and space. We'll talk about Einstein later, and perform and create something that is really like unique or made for space. That's why my mojo is play space. That's what I always say in the shows that I go to.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because it also the reason I brought that up is because this kind of takes us back a little bit into the traditional way of making music, right? So there's a certain randomness in the way things are happening, and so when you kind of do a session in a digital audio workstation, for example, it's
Okay.
almost like you would be recording in a studio, because there are certain takes and you need to then decide which take is actually kind of better. So I like this idea of instruments that kind of take us back a little bit into making a conscious decision of what we are actually going to take and what not. So I think in that sense,
Yeah.
I kind of just wanted to bring that up. Now, underneath everything is a very specific sampling method that you have. I'm assuming that has to do
Yep.
with the dome setup. And by the way, throughout this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a couple of clips from your studio recordings, because I found it actually really interesting the way you've set your studio up. And you also have a tutorial about your instrument online that kind of shows that a little bit. And by the way, I find that absolutely fascinating that you have the lights on the speakers so that you see which speakers are active. This is super interesting. So I'm going to show a couple of clips throughout the interview, so that people have an understanding of what's actually happening in your studio. But at the basis of everything is the sampling technique. Now, I'm assuming that there's a certain level of intellectual property that you want to preserve. So, but can you kind of tell us a little bit about what that sampling method kind of contains, and how that actually kind of feeds into your instrument?
Yeah. Well, it multi-directional. That's what it is. You need to capture the directivity of sound, where it comes from, thinking about a dome, a half a 3D sphere, and then you need what we call spatial envelopment. So you need the reflections coming from the sides, which come a little bit later, depending on the room, right? From the back and from above. So capturing that, Ambisonics, although I did not use Ambisonics, I used a similar multi-directional technique, which is indeed proprietary, and it's now in the process of the patent. No, so it's been granted the patent pending status, but we'll see. It's that's the starting point. Then we have the architecture of the instruments, like the drums that I've just told you. That's to me an invention, same as piano, right? A piano was not found in the middle of the woods by somebody having a nice walk one afternoon. A piano was an invention coming from the harpsichord, but an invention, an amazing technology. It's applied knowledge. No, the fact that it doesn't use electricity doesn't mean it's not technology. It's an amazing technology. But instead of pulling the strings, you're hitting the strings, and then you have dynamics, piano forte. That's why it's called piano forte. And well, it was a success. I'm sure many other instruments were invented and they were not successful. The piano was successful. But my point is, it is an invention. I used to teach music history course to sound engineers. So I had to cover in 3 months about 7,000 years of music. There was no time for details, right? So I had to be very like the eye of the eagle. You know what happened in prehistory, what happens with the Egyptians, what happened in Greece, then Rome, then medieval times, then the tempering of the scale, then classical music, then electronic music, 20th century. That's it, right? That's 7,000. But that helped me to see things very much from above. And that's when I realized that those key inventions changed the history of music. They did. The tempering of the scale, the invention of instruments, blah, blah, blah. So that motivated me to think. I'm not intending to change history or anything, but what I mean is that is a motivation. What can you invent now? Well, I'm sure you can invent many things. One of those things are spatially reactive instruments, which is what I did. But anyway, I deviated a little bit. You were asking about, the sampling technique, the architecture, and the embodiment of an actual reactive instrument, which in the case of drums is very effective. It could be applied to a saxophone if you wish. I don't think I like it with a saxophone, but anyway, that's up to whoever wants to use it. So it's a complex process of sampling, method, architecture, and the actual embodiment, the example. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, and I'm kind of curious. Let's say we have somebody out there who wants to use your sampling technique in order to kind of create something that is in line with your way of thinking. How would they go about that? Would they have to come to your studio and kind of
No. No, I think once I release it publicly, I mean, right now it's under the patent status, pending status. Whoever wants it can reproduce it, right? In my opinion, it's part of the possibilities that you have. I mean, you can go Ambisonics, you can invent your own technique, you can use mine, and some techniques might work best for some things or other things. So my opinion is those are tools. You have a sea of tools and a palette of possibilities. Mine is one in terms of sampling. Use it if you like it or if it works for whatever you're trying to do. There are other things too. That's how I would view it.
Yeah. Now, one thing I find interesting is that, kind of when Dolby Atmos came around, people started to think about immersive audio as something that is creative, right? Because before that, especially in the Ambisonic space, most of the people who were dealing with Ambisonics and were interested in Ambisonics wanted to recreate reality, right? And not kind of create something that is not real in that sense and is creative. And you deliberately kind of went into a different direction, right? So and you actually did that before other people did that. That's sort of something that I find interesting. So why did you kind of, and you already responded or you already answered that to a little bit, but was there any particular moment where you felt that essentially realism is not what you're aiming for? It's actually kind of this creativity and kind of making something that's a little bit more kind of, an instrument, as you say, rather than just a recreation of a physical appearance of sound?
Yes, totally. I mean, yes, I'm looking for realism with that technique. I'm looking for a beautiful capture of sound with directivity and spatial envelopment within a neutral professional live room, which is right there, back there. I can bring my laptop and show it to you, but it's a place free of filtering with a balanced reverberation, no major resonance modes, etc. So yeah, I was aiming at realism as a starting point, but because I care about quality and I care about technique, and to me a 3D sound, as I said before, is a superior sound when you compare it to stereo. But that's just the starting point. Then creativity takes over. Why? Because audio is made for that. If you think about it, you cannot hear drums performing near a singing voice. That just doesn't exist in a room. But I'm thinking about rock loud drums, right? It just does not happen in a room, right? The drums are way too loud for you to be able to listen to a singer unless it's Pavarotti, I don't know, which is super powerful voice. But in audio, you can do it. You can balance a very super loud drum performance with even a whispering singing voice. You can balance that. That's one part. But the other is and I call it surrealism. I don't know what the proper name is, but I call it like that. You can mix acoustic spaces. So you can have drums as if they were living in a cathedral with a massive reverberation, and you can have the singer as if the singer was singing in a small bedroom, and the guitar playing singing in a sized bedroom with a mid reverb. And all of that is making one song. We might hear it normal nowadays because a lot of us grew up with recorded music. We had more contact with recorded music than with concerts, right? But it's not normal. It's not normal to have different components of the same song living in different acoustic spaces. It's not normal to balance drums with a voice. Therefore, yeah, audio is here to, in some cases, represent the best out of a symphonic orchestra, if you wish. But for mainstream electronic music, it's also here to create for creativity. So yeah, you should jump into surrealism and creative things.
So in some sense, it's almost like augmented audio, right? I mean, because you're starting with real, realistic kind of recordings
Yes.
and samplings,
Yeah.
and then you are kind of using your creative tools or your creative instrument to augment that with things that would normally not really happen in a real space, right? So kind of the drum kit moving around in three-dimensional space is not something that you would normally kind of hear because the drummer would be on one fixed space, and that's sort of where the drum sounds would happen.
Correctly.
I think that's really interesting because and not a lot of people that I have talked to actually have that perspective of augmenting something real to create something new, because usually it's either one of the other, right? So it's either recreating a recording in such a way that it feels like you are really there, or it is something that is completely experimental and kind of so in that sense, that's actually super interesting. Now,
Thanks.
you designed your instruments to be format flexible, but obviously underneath the surface, it isn't really format flexible. So it's not like you are creating Atmos, Ambisonics, and other multi-channel systems internally. Can you talk a little bit about how that abstraction happens in the instrument, and also the relationship to your sampling method, maybe?
Yeah. I have a limited number of positions within the 3D sphere. I have exactly 17 possible positions, which is exactly this studio. I mean, we cannot see it, but there are 17 speakers creating a dome. Dolby Atmos and Ambisonics help me decode my own sphere and my positions in a beautiful way, especially Dolby Atmos. Ambisonics, I don't find it that, but it's great for live performance because there's no latency. And Dolby Atmos is great for studio work, in my opinion. But they both decode my 17 positions beautifully. And some of my sounds do pan. Well, that's part of the patent. I'll talk about it eventually. But the way they pan, yeah, they can move in between speakers, yeah, but the anchors are 17 positions. Why 17? Well, in my opinion, why more? You can have more. You can have 30, 60. You can go to wavefield synthesis and have hundreds, thousands of speakers, and it might be the best everything created by humans for audio, right? But it's a little bit too much. So I thought, what would be a good middle point? Stereo, it's out of the question. That's history, like Hertz said. 5.1 is not enough. 7.1 is not enough. Well, Dolby Atmos, Ambisonics with a dome of 17 speakers. I thought this is doable in a concert. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's doable. Why would I want more resolution? Maybe I want it, but I don't need it. So that's the origin of my sphere. Of course, my sphere moves, and when it moves, it goes in between speakers. The more speakers you have, you might get a better resolution, maybe. I'm not that interested in that level of quality. I'm interested in what ears can perceive in a concert. Clear position changes, assuming that concerts you cannot control the acoustic. Normally, you cannot control the acoustic characteristics of the room. Therefore, you might need I don't know, a reduced space, like in my opinion, should be a maximum of 24 meters diameter in order to create a rhythmic music, right? Before the physical delays of speakers ruin your rhythmic creation. Because I am rhythmic. If some people are more atmospherical, forget what I said. You can do it in a stadium if you always like Roger Waters did. But in terms of rhythm, you have those limits. So I'm imagining a concert, and I think I want clear position changes of sound. I don't need more. It's just a middle point compromise, right? And Dolby Atmos and Ambisonics can decode what I did beautifully. So it's great.
I mean, 17 is a very interesting number, because it's just it's sort of, you need 16 in order to represent third order ambisonics, right? So kind of it is a good middle ground, in the sense that it is enough to accurately represent third order ambisonics, and quite frankly, you probably don't need much more. But by the way, for those of you watching, Pablo was referring to Gert Koynen's book, Stereo Was a Nice Try, which is an absolute must read for anybody interested in immersive audio. I recently had an interview with Gert, and Pablo also had an interview with Gert, because Pablo actually has a very interesting YouTube channel, which is criminally underappreciated. I think a lot of more people should kind of go over to Pablo's channel and watch that. There are a couple of really interesting interviews on his channel. So once you're done watching this video, go down and sign up for Pablo's YouTube channel. I'm going to leave a link in the description below, and subscribe, because there's a lot of interesting stuff on that particular channel. Now, realistically, right? So kind of if I'm looking at your Kontakt instrument, the first thing that I'm starting to notice is that anybody who is new to that field is probably going to be a little bit overwhelmed with this setup, right? There is a bit of a learning curve in getting everything done correctly. Now you have a tutorial online which I think explains it really well, and there's also additional material, and you have a template for Pro Tools if people want to use that with Pro Tools. But how would you suggest that somebody approaches your instrument? What are the things that are important to consider when they first kind of look at the SPAT curve?
Well, it's not that complicated, but it's easy for me to say that, right? You need two steps. The first step is to install the console that comes. It's a Kontakt console that I created. It comes with the product. You have to copy and paste it and place it in the correct folder, right? It's in the Native Instruments Kontakt folder, right? You just copy, paste, place it there. That's the first thing to do. Otherwise, they just don't work. But that takes about 30 seconds of your time, right? Then configuration, it could be complicated. I've explained everything in the manual if it comes to a day where you have to do it yourself. But hopefully you won't ever need to do it by yourself. You just need a track. You need Dolby Atmos in your computer, or Ambisonics, and a decoder, either for binaural, listening, or if you have a multi-channel system, multi-channel decoder, right? And the only thing you need to do is to understand what Kontakt is sending, the 17 positions, receive them individually, and pan them where they should belong to. That comes in the manual. And either Dolby Atmos or Ambisonics will decode that, and that's it. You never have to do it again, because you can copy-paste that track in order to load more of my instruments. The other thing you can do is get the template, send me an email, or watch those YouTube videos where I explain exactly how to configure it. I think those are 3-minute videos. I hope they're useful, in which I explain exactly how to configure those instruments in Logic, Ableton Live, Pro Tools, Reaper for sure, and Nuendo. Headphone did the favor for me to create the Nuendo template, because I don't use Nuendo. So he helped me there. Said, "Oh, I did it." So the user could just send me an email. I'll send the template. I'm going to release version 2 of SPAT Curve, in which I will include all of the possible templates that I know of, at least 5 DAWs. But versions change, and maybe the template that you open, does not necessarily work. So it's best to watch a 3-minute YouTube video in my channel, and you should get going. And also, but before that, you have to watch Michael Wagner, G. Wagner, explaining you how to set up Dolby Atmos in Reaper, in Pro Tools, and blah blah blah. Because that's what I did when I migrated to Reaper. I watched one of your videos and I learned how to configure Dolby Atmos in Reaper. So yeah, the user must be comfortable with Dolby Atmos and Ambisonics. I'm not going to explain that. And if they are, then the rest is watching a 3-minute YouTube video to configure that track.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for kind of for that kind of little nod. I'm not quite sure if I'm really that good in doing these things, but it's certainly appreciated.
Very useful.
I'll try my best to kind of explain how these things work from a very basic perspective. I mean, one of the challenges that I see these days is that a lot of people are just not interested in reading any manual or kind of doing anything. So I think in your tutorial video, I'm primarily speaking about the one that's, I think, about an hour long, or at least 45 minutes or something.
The long
like
one, yeah.
The long one, right? You made the point repeatedly, right? So you need to think at least about, it's not really that complicated, as you say, but you need to think about how to actually configure the output, because if you don't do that, you can't really use it at all. So are you concerned that, kind of modern producers might not even be willing to do just that little kind of understanding, or kind of that little learning?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I would imagine modern producers to be skilled nowadays in 3D audio, Dolby Atmos, Ambisonics, and willing to have a huge palette of possibilities, among which mine is one of the possibilities. So I will be a little bit disappointed if they didn't want to do that little effort, because for an experienced person, it's not going to be hard, and you have to do it once. And once you do it once, you just copy paste and repeat.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think kind of, professionals or people who are kind of making a living with that, certainly, right? But I'm thinking more of the mass market, which is a little bit sort of where my user channel is positioned. People that are more kind of hobbyists and just kind of tinkering around with these things, that might be a little bit of a challenge. But by the way, you were mentioning Nuendo. Cubase should actually be able to do that as well. Now, I'm not completely sure if you can open up a Nuendo template with Cubase. I don't think you can. But if anybody out there wants to use it with Cubase, that works just as fine. So that's also working.
Yeah.
Pro Tools actually did a lot of things over the last couple of months. I think they're really pushing immersive audio to completely new levels by introducing all these additional options. They now have the MPEG-H decoder in there. They have the Audio Vivid decoder, which is this Chinese kind of version of MPEG-H, I think. It's sort of, they're really doing that, and having a template, a Pro Tools template, at least I think anybody who is doing some serious work should not have too many difficulties setting everything up. But it is not completely plug and play. So it's essentially, you need to spend a little bit of time figuring out.
Yes, I mean, I did my best effort to make it as easy as possible, but 3D audio, it's not simple. It is just not simple. I jump all the time between Dolby Atmos and Ambisonics. I jump all the time between Pro Tools and Reaper.
Yeah.
And I still get confused. I still start a new session and say, what was this? I have to check my own notes. It is something, unfortunately, still a little bit complicated.
Yeah, it's one of those things, kind of on my channel I try to be agnostic when it comes to digital audio workstations. So I try to cover everything from pretty much any DAW really. But it's exactly that, right? So whenever people always ask me, can you do like a video for DaVinci Resolve Fairlight, right? And then the last time I actually worked with that was like half a year ago, which is effectively means I need to really learn everything. So it is exactly that, right? So it's kind of, especially if you jump between digital audio workstations, it can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah.
So, kind of when it comes to the consumer, most people are probably going to hear everything on headphones.
Yeah.
And there was one review on Sound on Sound, I think, where the reviewer said that he or she, I'm not quite sure, did the testing with the binaural rendering.
Yeah.
And said that it actually works quite well with binaural. Now there is a lot of discussion about how 3D binaural really is, and can you really recreate a 3D experience with binaural. I think it depends a lot also on your particular head geometry. I, for example, have a really large head, so the binaural mixers usually don't work for me because it's just not the way I usually hear. My hearing kind of is a little bit different. Now, but coming back to your instrument, so how much do you actually design with the binaural fold down in mind? I mean, you kind of in your videos you say a couple of times that if you really want to get the full experience, if you really want to hear what it's about, you need to have some sort of multi-channel setup. But realistically, not everybody has that. So how much do you actually kind of think of that, and how much do you make sure that everything works well with binaural fold downs?
No, I did not conceive this for binaural. I mean, I am thankful for binaural. I am thankful that it can be translated to binaural and give you a sense of what it is, and that you can stream it and anyone can hear it anywhere in the world. But I've never been too keen on binaural. It gives you a great, well, it's better than stereo for sure, for headphones, and you get an amazing sense of distance, lateral distance, and about 45-degree distance. Right, this is amazing in binaural, but that's it. You don't get, not for my ears. I've tried everything. I have my binaural microphones there. I've tried all types of decoders. I've tried recording the multi-channel system with the binaural microphone. I've tried everything, and to me, it just gives you a sense of what it is, and it's not comparable to a full multi-channel experience live, a physical one. So, to me, it's a secondary thought, binaural. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't, but
yeah,
it
no,
is.
I would agree. I would agree that kind of it does help. But the problem really is that by kind of requiring really a multi-channel setup in order to hear everything the way it's supposed to be, right? So we are effectively excluding a large portion of the population because not everybody has access to that. So
Of course.
how do we deal with that? I think that sort of, I sometimes felt that, kind of, if you, for example, are doing things in a way that work well with the Apple AirPods and the head tracking. I do a lot of head tracking videos for exactly that reason, because I want to give people who have no access to multi-channel audio some possibility to at least experience it a little. Have you ever kind of worked with, for example, the audio movers binaural renderer that kind of translates everything to head-tracked AirPods audio?
Not the audio movers, no. I've used the binaural Dolby Atmos decoder and the Ambisonics ones. And yes, when I translate a mix, I do a specific mix for binaural. Yes, that's true. I mean, I don't rely on the fact that, oh, my mix sounds great with a multi-channel 3D setup, and then the automatic binaural translation, that's it. No, I create a completely different approach. I turn off all speakers. I go specifically for an entire day with headphones, redoing the mix for headphones. I have found that some of the directions that I have does not necessarily have to be literally represented in binaural. I'll give you an example. Some things that are 45 degrees elevated sound better 90 degrees. Like you make a bigger difference in between horizontal and vertical. The nuances of 45 degrees, as I said, maybe in this part it's beautiful, but in the very front and certainly not in the back, it makes no difference. So I move everything all the way up when it should theoretically be 45 degrees only. And that's what I do. But again, it's a secondary thought in my head. As I said, I was thinking about live performance. No one will not understand my instruments in a live performance because we're dealing with how ears work. Our ears have evolved 3D for survival reasons, local sound localization. So you need to be no expert, nothing. You just need to be human. And in a concert, you will immediately understand the value of my instruments. You might not like it. That's up to you, right? But what I mean is you would understand it. So binaural again, it's just it's a last thought in my head, but I'm totally aware that people will be listening through headphones and not with physical multiple speakers, except perhaps in a concert. I see no problem in making. I've done it myself, making 3D concerts. Why not? It's not that hard. I've done it.
Yeah, and I think that is really where your instrument also shines, right? It is something that you can actually use in a concert setting, in a live performance, something where people can actually experience the immersion into the sound. Now, I'm kind of curious. What changes if you are producing for a concert setting, right? So in the way you approach things, the environment and the room becomes part of the experience, right? So how does a producer approach that?
First of all, you choose Ambisonics, not Dolby Atmos, because of the latency. Second, you need to spend a good day of sound testing everything. You need a balanced system. You need to have it the same distance to the center of every speaker. You need some good ears so that the EQ of each speaker is balanced and similar to the other one. And that's pretty much it. The room, the only way for me to approach it, you need to make small concerts. So, as I said before, I mean, a maximum to me would be 24 meters diameter. You're talking about 500 people, and that's quite a lot. Maybe 600, right? But that's it. If the music is going to be 3D and rhythmic, okay? I would suggest 10 meters diameter. You're talking about 200 people. That's it. And you can defeat the room because unless it's a very bad room, you can defeat it because speakers will be acceptably close to you and your experience will dominate the acoustic characteristics of the room. It has to be loud, but 91 dBs are more than enough. You don't have to break people's ears. 91 dBs, perhaps parts of 94 dBs and short parts, and then back to 91. And that's it. If the room is really, really bad, there's nothing to do. Don't make a concert in that room or buy some massive acoustic treatment for that room. But that would be my philosophy. And the rest is, good taste. You use my instruments and other technologies. When I make concerts, I use my instruments and other technologies. And I found that you need to do a lot of compression. Otherwise, people don't listen to the nuances of sounds changing position quickly or slowly, etc. And other than that, I'm not a live audio engineering, so I don't think I can talk too much about this because I'm not that expert in live sound engineering, but I've done many multi-channel and 3D sound concerts, and that's my experience. And the instruments play themselves. The good thing is that in the case of my instruments, you need a musician who plays and needs to know nothing about audio. That musician's only going to play.
Now, if there's somebody out there who wants to get into that space to kind of create these live experiences, what would be your suggestion how to approach that? Because I'm particularly thinking about possibilities to actually conduct those those live experiences, right? Because there are probably not a lot of places around where you actually have a ready set Ambisonics system. So my assumption is that you probably need to also bring your own technology and your own setup.
Your own speakers, yes.
What's your suggestion if somebody wants to get into that space and wants to start making immersive music for live experiences?
I would make sure I find a trustable audio provider, and you just ask that audio provider, I need 11 good speakers and at least 2 massive subwoofers. Thinking of let's say 10 meters per 10 meters room, or 15 meters, 20 meters. Let's say 20 meters, like a big, really big room. You need 11 super high quality speakers, as much as you can pay. You put them there. The elevated speakers are not that complicated. You don't need to hang them from the ceiling. You need a pod to elevate them in the middle of the audience, and that's it. You set it up. Any sound engineering is going to be able to equalize each speaker and make it sound as loud and as flat as possible towards a center point of listening, and the rest you take over. And you are the one who's going to perform using, for example, my instruments or all the technologies that you might like, and the rest is up to you.
Exactly. I was also curious because there are certain groups around the world, right, where they have like a space that you can use. Like, for example, the Envelope group in San Francisco, I think they have like a venue where you can kind of use their Ambisonics environment. In your experience, is that something that is easy to get access to, or is this kind of something you will only find in certain locations around the world?
You will only find it in certain locations around the world, yeah. There are more and more, and there are festivals, specialized festivals, like for example, the New York City Electroacoustic Music Festival, the Di Frazioni Festival in Florence in Italy, plenty of university festivals in the UK, here in Mexico too, in Morelia, in cultural centers where you can just go and you will find that they already have a 3D sound system. But again, I mean, you need to be invited. It's not that difficult if you're an artist, but you need to be invited, scheduled for, in 6 months' time, you'll be able to have your concert, and that's it. And then there are another 1,000 composers who are in line, so that's it for you. So I would prefer, if possible, to be independent. So that's why the last 2 concerts that I created it was me renting the speakers. I had some institutional help, that's true, but it was me producing it, me renting the speakers, me choosing the speakers and the provider, setting up. And I think I would do it that way personally, so you don't have to depend on anyone. But yeah, there are plenty of places, more and more around the world, where you can find a massive speaker system.
Yeah, so if you're lucky and kind of in one of those locations, so once again, the people that I had the most interaction with was the group in San Francisco. But yeah, I'm not surprised that there are a lot of people in the UK that do that, because that's where Ambisonics started, right?
And that's where I started.
Yeah, and Europe in particular, also Germany and other places. So yeah, very, very good advice. But by the way, I was really impressed with this mini dome that you had at Super Booth. Can you tell me a little bit about
Yes.
that? Did you create that yourself, or
Oh,
kind of how did that come about? And I'm going to, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, I'm going to actually kind of show a couple of images
sure.
or a video about how that looked.
Well, thanks for bringing that up because that also has to do with the binaural discussion we were having a moment ago. So the first time I went to Super Booth in that was 2024, so 2 years ago, and obviously my first thought was, and I was last minute invite. Like Super Booth was full for some weird reason. I received an email saying we have a few spare places for last minute calls. Send us a letter of interest and we'll see if we'll take you. So I sent a letter of interest and explained my 3D institute. They weren't even published yet. So they liked it and said, yeah, come over. So I came, and my obvious solution was to bring a binaural experience, right? I'm traveling all the way to Germany. I'm going to bring headphones. And I prepared all my Pro Tools session, the binaural decoder, everything. And I didn't even have to bring a keyboard because Native Instruments was kind enough to give me a keyboard because we are partners, blah, blah, blah. And the experience was very, very mild. Like people would pass by and some people would read the banner and say, oh, 3D sound, that's so interesting. Yeah, put on your headphones and then explain. And some people thought, oh, this is cool. Most people would pass by and they have another 300 things to see. And they were like, oh, yeah, not interested. Thank you, right? So the next year, in 2025, I thought, no, I cannot bring a binaural experience. I have to be a multi-speaker experience because that's why I feel when I play here, you understand it immediately and you have fun. Especially you have fun by playing it. So I built a mini dome using PVC plumbing tubes. I can show it to you. It's right there in one corner. It's trashed by now, and I bought super low quality speakers, Bluetooth speakers, and it was a huge success. People would not stop passing by. It was amazing because they were first of all curious. What's that? That's a 3D. Yeah, sure. And second, I saved a lot of saliva. I didn't have to explain anything. I said, please come on in, play. Just press the pads. I brought a machine, little pads, right? So people would just go inside and started playing with the pads and they will immediately understand, wow, what's going on here? The sound all over. And then I would explain, yeah, if you press here, you can create rhythms, blah, blah, blah. It was really a huge success. So that led me to think about a more professional mini dome. And by January this year, I went to NAMM show to present my instruments as well. And I built a better mini dome. And it's still pretty successful. People like it. And people suggested, listen, we don't have the space in our studios, rooms, and we don't have the money. If you wanna, I mean, I was lucky enough that I got government grants from Mexico to buy the 17 speakers. I didn't pay for them; they were part of a grant. But yeah, if I had to buy this, it would be a problem, right? So a lot of people said, "Why don't you sell the mini dome?" So that's the next patent, and it's already in there. It's already in the process, and of course, I'm not going to build the speakers. There are plenty of a great brands such as Genelec making small speakers and other brands. I'm not going to make that. I'm going to make the actual structure, which is configurable for Dolby Atmos or Ambisonics, which you can hang it or put on microphone stands, and make democratized 3D audio for people.
That's actually, kind of, and sign me up. I'm going to be your first customer.
Sure.
Because that is, I think, is really fascinating. It is, I think, one of the challenges that many bedroom producers or hobbyists face, that they can't simply just dedicating a room for that purpose might be a challenge, right? So having something that is actually very, very confined in its space and small and something that is also manageable in terms of costs, I think that would bring in a lot of people. I'm
Yeah.
kind of curious. You said those were Bluetooth speakers, but
The
did
very first
you?
ones, the original ones were Bluetooth speakers in super cheap.
So you didn't even need an audio interface. Do I see this? Do I understand this correctly? So you would access them through the Bluetooth, or
No, no,
do
no.
you?
I did use cables.
Okay.
I can show you. I can send you a picture. I have a picture, a particular picture that I like, and you'll see that it looks like a lab. It's cables all over. Some are white because this Bluetooth speaker. Well, I mean, I did not use the Bluetooth. Actually, the Bluetooth was a problem because they would started trying to connect somewhere, right? But they were super cheap, and you would plug in an audio cable, and then you would have to plug in the power cable every 3-4 hours because they would run out of battery. And it looked like a lab.
Yeah, so we're going to show a couple of images and maybe some video. So because I thought that was really interesting, and I actually started to search how is this something that's available. So I really think that there would be people out there that would be interested in
I
getting
agree. I
that.
would be very happy to help because it is. It's going to help people to jump into 3D audio because they cannot get stuck in stereo. Stereo is over.
Yeah.
Stereo is history.
Yeah. But kind of it is a financial hurdle and also a kind of a hurdle in terms of space for most people, really. It's a challenge. Now we're already starting to talk a little bit about the future, and you already mentioned it a little bit earlier. You have stated somewhere that the next frontier is translating Einstein's relativity and quantum mechanics into, well, quantum mechanics is not from Einstein, but kind of quantum mechanics into reactive 3D sound. What do you? There's also a project I think that's called Mariachi 3D.
Yes. Yes.
So where are you heading conceptually?
Okay.
And kind of how does such a relativistic instrument actually look like, and what does it do?
Thank you for the question. That's something I really want to talk about. The second product, it's just about to be released, is Mariachi 3D. It's guitar spatial strumming, spatial guitar strumming. Actually, I'm likely to change the name because I don't want people to think, oh, this is mariachi. I like mariachi, but I don't do mariachi. I don't care about mariachi. Let's go somewhere else. So these are instruments that are synthesis to start with, and I imitated the strumming of a guitar in a very organic way. It's 4-bar loops. Every strum is a little bit different. It's a little bit louder, so it feels organic. And it's made with electronic sounds, which I resampled with my 3D sound technique and blah, blah, blah. But the rhythms are Afro-Mexican. So Africans emigrated at some point in Veracruz in the east coast, and they brought with them amazing rhythms. Those rhythms are used in mariachi and son music, so I wanted to capture that, but electronically. I'm not interested in making traditional I love mariachi. It's a part of Mexico. You cannot avoid it, but I'm not interested in making traditional mariachi. So it's electronic rhythms based on the basically Afro-Mexican culture. Now, so far, though, that's kind of okay. SPAT Curve is an invention, as I told you before. And but my real babies are Einstein's relativity, as you said, translation into 3D sound, and quantum mechanics. Those are actually done. They're finished. The thing is that I don't know when I'll be able to produce the graphical user interface. And one thing is to have something, the other is to commercialize it or put it out there. It's a process that it's extremely long, but they're done. And yeah, I'm very proud of those. And let me explain what's the main motivation behind it. I thought, what kind of experience could need a 3D sound system? Like so far, SPAT Curve, I talk about creative drums that use space. There's no physical law that should suggest that has to happen. It's an invention. But that's it. It's a creative invention, an artistic invention. And I was thinking, what would actually need a 3D sound system in order to live and exist. And Einstein's relativity was the answer to me, as well as quantum mechanics. I'm a son of a physicist. I'm not a physicist, but I am fascinated by physics. So I study as much as I can from books and YouTube videos. So I cannot claim I'm a physicist. I just like physics. And I find fascinating the idea of Einstein's both special and general relativity. It sounds very nerdy, and our audience might say, "Oh, that's nerdy and complicated." It is nerdy. It's not that complicated. An object moving in relation to you, or a person, is going to experience time more slowly than you. Some don't ask why. The limit of light speed and blah blah blah. Somebody approaching mass is going to experience, like here on Earth, our times runs slowly compared to somebody out there in away from Earth. As simple as that. Well, it's not as simple. If you want to know why, that's a different story. But let's assume that's the way it is. And it's been proved with experiments. That's the way reality works. So mass is very easily represented in music with low frequencies. Movement and time are clearly very easily represented in music by pulse and movement. You need a 3D sound system. You could do it in stereo, yeah, but that's extremely limited. The fact that something's moving in your field, that's real sound movement. If that movement is a pulse, then, because you have to think about the idea that how do we measure time? We need a pulse. I mean, physicists use atomic clocks, and it's super precise clocks, and that's it, and they're not thinking about anything else. But music can create time. Those are not my words, by the way. That's Jonathan D. Kramer's words. Music can structure and create time because you can have different types of pulses and pulse organizations through music. So I use pulses, but when they move, they have to slow down because they're moving in relation to you. You are the reference frame, the listener in the middle of the system, and the front of the system, the front of the concert, is the reference point. So everything is pulses, and when they move, they have to slow down. But I went all the way and used Lorentz formulas to make the proper calculation of speeds, and everything that's moving. The speed of light is very easy to define here, because once a sound is changing position every 30 milliseconds or less than that, you cannot hear movement. You hear a static thing. If it changes position every 30, 40, 50 milliseconds, you can actually begin to perceive that things are moving. So that's the limit, the light speed. And the rest is zero, sound not moving. So yeah, I performed all formulas from Lorentz and created the instruments in a way that pulses move, obeying Einstein's special relativity. And if you make good music out of it, that would be great. That's another story. Somebody has to make good music out of that. I hope I'm one of them, but that's the tool. In the case of general relativity, if you have a sound moving, a pulsed sound moving, when it passes through a fixed mass represented by a low frequency, you need big things to create low frequencies. So it's very easily to represent mass with low frequency. But when a sound passes low frequency, it has to slow down. It's time. So they're all pulses moving. But when they pass near a mass, a low frequency, they have to slow down. When they leave, they become quicker. Okay, that's relativity, right? How to make good music out of that, I don't know. Someone has to try, including me. But I find it amazing that people are going to be able to listen to Einstein's relativity. They're going to be able to listen to it, not see it, listen to it. And I can guarantee that what you hear is correct. You might not like it or not. You might find it interesting or not. But what you will be hearing is accurate, scientifically speaking. Now, quantum mechanics is even more interesting because I give you a brief example and I finish with this. It's very complex. I cannot claim I understand quantum mechanics, of course. I'm just a composer, a musician. But a very general principle such as low energy is going to give you something that you cannot measure where it is and what speed it has. Like, for example, if you were very small, I cannot see you. You will be all over, jumping all over, everywhere, right? But since you're big, I can see you steady there. And so I created the quantum drums. So drums in this case are, when you play them softly, they're going to be granular and they're going to be completely unpredictable. You cannot tell where it's going to come from the back, from above, from one of my 17 positions. But when you start playing them loud, strongly, high dynamics, they will gradually become static and fixed in space in the front and recognizable. Before that, it's just but starts playing loud. It's going but that's just one of the instruments. I have at least 12 quantum mechanic instruments, also based in Pauli, exclusion effect, and Heisenberg's. My father was my father studied at Fermilab with a student of Heisenberg. How do you say that? It's a grandson, academically speaking, of Heisenberg. So I heard a lot about Heisenberg during my childhood, and I'm just trying to represent this in sound and see if we can create something interesting and make sure it lives only in 3D sound. You cannot translate this back to stereo. You cannot, right?
It's very interesting. So sort of an acoustic quantum foam, right? It's a fascinating idea, and you know, kind of, you're right. Maybe it's even something that, you know, kind of we could use in order to teach about you know, kind of relativity and quantum mechanics, because as you said, nobody understands quantum mechanics. And that is fascinating. So I'm really very much looking forward to kind of playing around with those things. That sounds absolutely glorious and fascinating. I really like the way you approach these things in kind of being, on one hand, really grounded in theoretical work. You know, kind of, I'm an educator. I always appreciate that. But at the same time, also using that for a creative purpose and kind of really trying to make something that is unique in ways that people have not thought about before. So that's really cool. And I'm pretty sure that once these instruments come out, we are going to talk about it again on my channel. Well, thanks again for kind of this really interesting conversation. This was super exciting, and I'm in awe about all the things that you do, and really looking forward to kind of seeing what you're going to do in the future. Thanks again.
Thanks to you, Michael, and thanks for helping a lot of us in audio.
Well, thank you. That is very nice. Thank you. Well, that's everything for today. If you have any questions or comments, drop them in the comment section below or join our free Discord server. The invite link is in the description. Also, check out Pablo's YouTube channel for more content about his incredible instruments. Link is in the description as well. And don't forget to subscribe to stay updated on all things Dolby Atmos and immersive audio. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.